Good evening, everyone. Hi, it's Gordon Causey. Thanks for watching. I see David M. asking if this is going yet, and Sheriff of YouTube already commenting on my outfit. But if you haven't watched my videos before, they always start with Candy the Wonder Pup jumping all over me. So, shake it off. Lay down. Speak. Good job. Come on up. If I don't give my dog a treat, she won't leave me alone. No, Sheriff of YouTube, I wasn't waiting for 5 likes. But thank you for that anyway. I looked for them the other day, and they come in a plastic sleeve, and I hadn't opened them yet. And says it was the first time I actually had the puppies on, and you actually cannot see anything when you look through these. And I don't know how good these are. I mean, they look like when you watch the old, the old 3D movies from the 1950s. It struck me that these were the type of glasses. It said on them, it says, never view the sun without Eclipse glasses or it may cause permanent eye injury. Filters that are damaged or separated from their mountings should be discarded. Put on your glasses before looking at the sun and turn away to remove them after you have looked at the sun. Limit continuous use of the Eclipse glasses to 3 minutes at a time. Never let minors use Eclipse glasses without supervision. Only clean with a soft cloth or tissue and store them at a safe place. Discard Eclipse glasses after 10 years. Meets the transmittance requirements of ISO, International Standards Organization 12312-2, 2015. Manufactured by Cagnan County Kauai Craft Company Limited, and they are made in China. What a shock. Authorized distributor by Solar Eclipse International out of Toronto. Protective polymer lenses made in the USA to strict ISO standards. Final production and assembly in China. So these are my Eclipse glasses. We have 2 pairs. I've also made the shoebox thingamajiggy. But it struck me that tomorrow, around 3 p.m., probably starting around 2, there are still people wearing masks. I didn't know if we still had one in the house. And then my wife will probably give me grief, but I dug through her purse, and lo and behold, I found one. So tomorrow, you're probably going to see people walking around like this. You won't see a mask on my face. I think this one is for a child. It's really small. Not that it matters. Masks, in my estimation, are completely useless, especially given my beard. Impossible to make a seal, even if it was a proper mask. And these ones, even without the beard, you can't make a proper seal on them anyway. These things were originally designed. This one says something on it. Dent. It had some right there. It says Dentex Canada. DENT-X. Probably can't see it. I don't know if you can. Right up there at the top. Yeah, you can see it a bit. Dentex. And that's primarily what these are designed for. Dentists want to avoid having, when they're working on your teeth, they don't, and spraying water in. They don't want the water coming back into their mouth. That's what these are for. They're not to stop a viral pathogen, never designed for that. Likewise, when doctors wear these types of masks in an operating theater, as per the CDC, what they're designed for is to prevent spittle. Operating staff talking and saying, scalpel retraction, forceps, whatever instruments they're asking for. As you talk, spit. You don't want that going into an open, gaping wound. And likewise, something like someone's chest cavity is open. You don't want bodily fluids like blood spraying you in the mouth. So that's what these are for. Never to stop a viral pathogen like a SARS-CoV-2 or an influenza or any other transmittable virus. It's like carrying sand in a shopping cart. But anyway, it'll be funny. I've just done a video now with me showing myself with the thumbnail wearing this stuff, but tomorrow's going to be an interesting day. A lot of us are going to, I'll be outside at 3 o'clock or thereabouts. And I think it's supposed to start in around 2 p.m. And the sun, I guess the moon is going to move in front of the sun. And then at sometime around 3, I don't know, 3:15, 3:20, I don't know what the exact timing is. It will fully block the sun, and all you'll be able to see is what they call a coronal ring around the moon, and then it'll move out of eclipse. And then, so it's going to, starting around 2, it's going to start getting darker and darker and darker. And then a brief window, 3-4 minutes of totality where there's just this coronal ring. So things will be as dark as nighttime, I'm assuming. We'll find out. And then very quickly it'll move out of totality, and it'll get brighter and brighter over the next hour, and we'll be back to a normal day. My area, they're forecasting cloud cover, which it'll still get dark, but you won't be able to see the moon moving in front of the sun. We'll see what happens. More curious for me is what's going to happen in terms. Anna Monarchy wants to know if I'm ready for the next pandemic. Goodness knows, I was just reading about bird flu and that they're already working on a quote unquote vaccine. They've changed the definition of what a vaccine is to include mRNA. My understanding of vaccines forever and a day were a substance typically injected that contained the actual virus itself, either a deactivated or dead form or weakened virus. And that was what a vaccine was. Now, the definition has been broadened to any substance that is supposed to trigger an immune system response. And so that given, they say that the mRNA shots do trigger an immune response, that then it qualifies as a vaccine. I prefer the old definition. I consider putting these spike building instructions into your body to be hijacking your physiology. And Anna Markey says hello to other like-minded individuals. Well, comment field is open. So if you want to chat along with Anna Monarchy, so far Sheriff of YouTube, David M. If David M is still here, you're most welcome. But the thing that's been going through my mind is that a large percentage of the population is going to be fixated on looking at the stars, looking up at the sky, looking at the sun and moon. And while this is all happening, what else could happen in the world? And I'm going to default back to what's going on in Israel. And there's been reports recently that Israel, the IDF, has been withdrawing a large number of its troops from southern Gaza, from the Gaza Strip in general. And couple that with the fact that last week Israel struck the complex of the Iranian embassy in Damascus, Syria, and killed a number of Iranian military officials, apparently including 2 generals. I think that's pretty much confirmed, and a number of Syrian nationals as well. I think around 11 people in total were killed. And Iran is, as should be expected, they are promising a retaliation, revenge. They're promising something in response. And I think it's plausible that at least part of the rationale for Israel, the IDF, withdrawing troops out of Gaza, may be to have people ready to respond to whatever may be coming. And part of what may be coming is it may be from the northern border. It might be from Lebanon, where Hezbollah is centered. And we're on a bit of a hair trigger. Things that are happening in Russia and Ukraine right now. There's talk of deeper NATO involvement. There's even speculation that countries like the United States and France and perhaps other NATO nations could even send troops over under the guise of a support role. And I would remind anyone, if you know your history, when the U.S. first got involved in Vietnam, that it started out very low, just sending over advisors. I think they had advisors going over to Vietnam as early as the 1950s, but then within, things can ramp up quickly from there. I'm going to read what Anna Monarchy is saying. I think a cop might have actually quit because I was telling her about what mRNA could do prior to the initial rollout. I told her to get transferred, quit. I think right now in Canada, the numbers were just updated, and it's barely over 15% of Canadians who are up to date on their COVID shots. The official line that I'm reading from Health Canada and all the provincial health authorities is that if it has been 6 months since your last COVID jab or your last COVID infection, that you need to get another boost. And it's never ending. It's never ending. And only 15% of Canadians are in compliance with that advice. And I have to wonder, of that 15% who are fully compliant, how many of them are living in a long-term care, hospice, nursing home type situation where a lot of the time, sadly, people don't even know what day of the week it is, and don't even recognize their loved ones. And so how hard is it to get someone to comply in that type of situation? I'm just reading what Anna Monarchy, what he said. Nuclear tension is building, God forbid. I've likened the situation in Israel, and I haven't done it for a while, but I've made this analogy before, and I think it's very fitting. I look upon it, and it might seem a little trite, but I view it somewhat as the Godfather movies. In particular, the first Godfather movie, where the Corleone family is more or less the top dogs in New York City, in the New York City area. They're, of the 5 families, they're number 1, but there are 4 or 5 other families that are competing with them. And what happens is it looks like the Titalia family is going after them and trying to knock them down. And it's toward the end of the movie, after the meeting of the 5 families, where Tom Hagen and Vito Corleone, Marlon Brando, are in the backseat of a car, being chauffeured back to their home, wherever they're going. And Tom Hagen says, "Should I ask that any of these drug men not have criminal records?" And Vito Corleone says, "Mention it, don't demand." And then Vito says, "Barzini should know that without having to be told." And Tom Hagen says, "Don't you mean Titalia?" And Vito says, Tatalia's a pimp. It was Barzini all along, but I never realized it until today. And what had happened is the Barzini family had been using the Tatalia family to try and knock off the Corleone family, or to knock them down. And when we look at the Middle East, in terms of economic, military, in terms of being the most influential nation in the Middle Eastern region, the most influential, powerful nation is without question Israel. They're the only nuclear power in the area. They have a tech industry that is probably on a par, or maybe at least rivals the Silicon Valley in California, and it may even be above it. So they're an incredibly powerful nation. They're the Corleone family. Iran, likewise, is powerful. They have a large military. They have a lot of oil. And they want to knock Israel down. But rather than going at Israel directly, instead they have their proxies, to use the Godfather analogy, they have their Tatalia family. And the Tatalia family for Iran are the three H's of Hezbollah, Hamas, and the Houthis in Yemen. And Monarchy says that his father stopped after 5, after getting still diagnosed with COVID after his 3rd and 5th injections. It's a difficult thing. It's a difficult thing to try and get people to question the authority figures on it. I kind of think of it with these glasses. There's something intuitive with me that says, these little things are going to protect me from, solar radiation that could damage my retinas and threaten my vision. But at the same time, part of me says, well, you know what? Better safe than sorry. And we'll see what happens. There was a picture that's gone around, and apparently it's been verified as true. Donald Trump, during the 2017 solar eclipse, looked up into the sky without any glasses on, but there are also pictures of him where he looked up again with glasses on. And I have to wonder, if you take a quick glancing look to watch the moon obscure the sun, if you take a quick glancing look, and this is not advice by any stretch of the imagination, all my degrees in the sciences are from the internet. I don't know anything, but intuitively, it strikes me that a look, just a quick glancing look for a few seconds, intuitively, I don't think that could cause major damage. I think otherwise, eclipses do happen. We'd see mass cases of people going blind. I think you would probably have to be staring at it bug-eyed without blinking for, at least 2-3 minutes straight, or maybe at least 30 seconds, but a glancing look. Anyway, Monarchy is no longer on the live chat. If anyone wants to take over, go ahead. But I think tomorrow's going to be interesting. There's a lot of anticipation building within religious communities. I might have misrepresented this before. There are a number of towns called Nineveh on the path, a number of towns called Salem on the path, or Salem if you prefer. And I think there was the eclipse in 2017, the eclipse that's coming today. And I forget whether Nineveh was in, I don't think they were in the 2017 one. It was mostly Salem or Salem for that one. For this eclipse that's coming today, I think it's a number of towns called Nineveh. And the town that's right in the nexus of the two paths is called, I believe it's called Rapture. I think in a previous video I might have said it was called Nineveh. It's not. The town, the unincorporated township in Indiana that is right at the nexus of the 2017 and 2024 arcs of totality, within the nexus is the town of Rapture. Indiana. And so we have a lot of anticipation from people of a religious Christian view. And there's so much going on in that regard. I mean, given that it is a Sunday, should talk about at least a little about, what's going on in terms of faith, in terms of Christians and Jews and even Muslims. I mentioned before the red heifers. There are red heifers right now in Israel that were imported to that country by something called the Temple Institute, and that was back in September or October of 2022. The heifers, it's for a sacrifice mentioned in chapter 19 of the book of Numbers, which is part of the Pentateuch, the first 5 books of the Bible. And the general consensus is that before a third Jewish temple could be built, that there needs to first be this red heifer sacrifice to cleanse the nation of Israel, both in the Temple Mount itself, as well as the people. I don't understand it 100% fully, just in broad strokes. And these red heifers, the red heifer sacrifice, right now, my understanding is they imported 5, September, October of 2022, and they have to be completely without blemish. They can't have any odd colored hairs. They have to be completely red in order to qualify to be sacrificed. And either 1 or 2 of the 5 have been already disqualified. And the heifer has to be in its 3rd year of life. And right now they all qualify. The 3 that are still completely red, they're all in those 3 are in their 3rd year. They still qualify. There was speculation that this could happen as soon as the Passover, which is April 22nd, the Jewish Passover, when Jews celebrate the Exodus, when they were delivered from bondage in Israel, or rather from bondage in Egypt. For reference, watch the old Cecil B. DeMille classic film, The 10 Commandments, with Charlton Heston. I just watched the first half of it tonight, because we're approaching that season, the Passover season, and it's something that I kind of grew up with. It would always be on TV, and as a family, we would always watch it. And at any rate, this whole notion of a 3rd temple on the Temple Mount has much of the world on edge right now, especially the Islamic world, because on the Temple Mount, which is the most widely believed site of both the first and second Jewish temples, there's already a Dome of the Rock there and this Al-Aqsa Mosque. So how could you build a 3rd temple? And I've had some thoughts on the matter with respect to what's going on in the world and the way Israel is prosecuting its war in Gaza. And it's had me speculating in my own mind, wondering if Israel is, in a fashion, hoping to provoke a response so that we get a lot of rockets flying from Hezbollah, from Hamas, from the Houthis, maybe from Iran itself. And then as all these rockets are flying, all that would have to happen is for a stray rocket, a stray missile, to hit the Temple Mount. And if that were to happen, what happens to the Dome of the Rock? What happens to the Al-Aqsa Mosque? Boy, howdy. And now, because Jerusalem is under the control of the Israelis, it is their territory. They won it from Jordan in 1967. Up until 1948, it was ruled by the British, before the British, it was ruled by the Ottomans for 400 or 500 years. And then after 1948, during the first Arab-Israeli War, Jordan captured East Jerusalem, which is where the Temple Mount is. And then in 1967, Israel captured it from Jordan. So it's Israeli territory, Jerusalem, and it is their declared capital. Jerusalem is the capital of Israel. However, not every country in the world recognizes Jerusalem as Israel's capital. Many still recognize Tel Aviv. Donald Trump famously had the United States recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. To me, that makes the most sense. It's obviously the capital of Israel. But you talk about contention. So tomorrow's going to be an interesting day. Wars and rumors of wars. Earthquakes. And we had the earthquake in New York City. What day was that? Friday, I think. Yes, it was either Friday or Saturday. They got hit by an earthquake that's 4.8 on the Richter scale, which is not insignificant. It's not major, but the only earthquake I've ever experienced in my own life personally was, I think, in and around a 3.2 when I lived in a town called Ajax, just east of Toronto. And it was 3.2 and didn't even know it was an earthquake. I just thought a plane had flown low overhead. And it caused rattling on shelves, no ground shaking. And then it was a day or so later that we heard on the radio or in the newspaper that there had been an earthquake along a fault line which runs along the St. Lawrence River with the Great Lakes. So 4.8 is, I imagine if someone was up on the Empire State Building or the Chrysler Building or this new Freedom Tower, and I imagine it would have been felt at a high. Just strange times that we're living in. And now we have the eclipse tomorrow. We have kind of a razor's edge situation in Israel as that nation waits for Iran to respond to the attack on the consular complex in Damascus. The situation in Russia, between Russia and Ukraine, is looking like it could be escalating. And there could possibly be the involvement of U.S., French, and potentially other NATO troops being sent. And how would the Russians react to that? Finland has now joined NATO, as well as Sweden, two famously neutral countries, and something I haven't mentioned for a while. But prior to major wars breaking out, like in World War I or World War II, quite often what we have seen happen is countries, empires, everyone starts forming alliances. So I find it interesting that two famously neutral countries like Norway and Finland, and I don't know if Sweden's involved or not, but Scandinavian countries, famously neutral, have now joined on with NATO. Finland shares a border with the Russians, and there's talk that Russia will be sending or has already sent troops to the Finnish-Russian border. Things are on edge. Things are on edge. And when we look at the WEF, the World Economic Forum, and their Great Reset, Fourth Industrial Revolution, call it whatever you want, this agenda about reorganizing the world, these are great ways in which to achieve that. War can turn the world upside down. I mean, and I wonder at what point are we, I feel like we're on the edge of World War III, that we are on the precipice. And, when we look retrospectively back on the First World War, people say that, what was the cause of World War I? What started World War I? And they will say, oh, it started when um, the Archduke Ferdinand was assassinated in Sarajevo in the old Yugoslavia. And um, but that no one knew World War One was starting after Archduke Ferdinand was assassinated. He and his wife Sophia. No one knew World War One was starting at that point. It just devolved into it. Now, prior to that event, the European continent certainly had been building up toward war ahead of time, and it was almost like they were just looking for an excuse. And you look at the world today, it looks like we're building up toward war again, and it's just what's going to be the trigger. And I think we might look back and say that the October 7th attack on Israel, October 7, 2023, that was the start. Or some might say, no, it was February 2022 when the Russians invaded Ukraine. And then you have the whole situation between Taiwan and China. Taiwan, interestingly, they just experienced a major earthquake, 7.8. And to give that some scope, as I understand it, New York City was 4.8. Well, if an earthquake were to occur at 5.8, that would be 10 times stronger than the earthquake that hit New York City. And then 6.8 would be 10 times stronger than that. So it's a scale that goes up exponentially. So 7.8 versus 4.8, I think we're talking in the neighborhood of 1,000 times more violent than what New York experienced. Each one is 10 times, each level up on the Richter scale is 10 times greater. So 3 is 10 times greater than 2, 4 is 10 times greater than 3, 5 is 10 times greater than 4, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so Sheriff of YouTube wrote something. Norway and Finland have been equally exposed to WF and UN like all G20 nations. There is a move afoot. Something is happening globally. There is a shift happening. And we're in a transitionary phase, which is very unsettling when things are transitioning. I wonder how much longer a guy like me Joe Nobody, can express himself freely on YouTube. How long before this is heavily regulated? We've seen the Canadian government, my government, making steps toward restricting speech. I can't share news articles anymore on social media platforms because the government doesn't want me to do that. And they've also brought in legislation that has the potential to further restrict the ability of individuals such as myself or anyone from expressing political ideas. There's a lot of speculation that this whole transgender movement will render the Bible as hate speech because in Genesis it says male and female he created them. And that does trigger some people. But anyway, I've rambled on long enough. We shall see what happens. Should end it with a joke if I could think of one. I don't think many people heard the joke that I just put out as a video. I'm going to share a different one. Russian joke that I just heard tonight about the old Soviet Union. It's the old Soviet Union where they had lineups for things. You always had to line up to get stuff. And it has to be remembered that the old Soviet Union, there were ethnic Russians, Uzbeks, Tartars, they were all manner of different peoples within the broader Soviet Union. And so everyone is lining up, and there's a train expected to arrive with a train load with train cars full of cucumbers, something of a rarity. So everyone is lining up to get their cucumbers when an announcement comes at the store where everyone's lining up, and the store manager, whatever, comes out and he says, "We've received word that some of the cars filled with cucumbers, that they were diverted, so we're only getting about half as many cucumbers as we were originally anticipating. So we're going to ask now that all Jews leave the line. There will be no cucumbers for Jews." So the Jews grumble, but what can you do? And the Jews all leave. And then, an hour and a half, 2 hours later, the same gentleman comes out and he says, "We've received further news that after the train came in and they loaded the trucks, that instead of 3 truckloads, we're only getting half a truckload of cucumbers. So we're hardly getting any. So anyone who is not ethnic Russian, so if you're Uzbek or whatever, if you're not ethnic Russian, please leave the line. There's only enough for the ethnic Russians." And so the ethnic Russians are waiting and waiting. And an hour or two goes by. And finally, the guy comes out again, store manager, whatever, and he says, "Have some bad news, comrades. The truck that was bringing the few cucumbers we were going to get, it was hijacked. There will be no cucumbers. You can all go home now." And the one ethnic Russian turns to the other and goes, "Oh, the Jews get all the breaks." Because they didn't have to stand in line. They got told early. Anyway, cheers to you as well, Anna Monarchy, and a Sheriff of YouTube. We shall see what happens. It's going to be an interesting few days. I feel like we're just waiting. We're just waiting. It's like the credits are rolling and we're waiting for the start of the movie. And I think there's very real potential that around 3 p.m. Eastern time tomorrow, something could happen in the world, and not just an eclipse, but something that while everyone's looking up the sky, something else will happen in the world. But that's not a prediction. That's just a guess. We'll see what happens. If something does happen, then I'll say it was a prediction. Anyway, God bless, and we'll see you all soon. Thanks for watching.